Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
The leadership of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt confirmed that they had won 34 parliamentary seats, which is equivalent to 20% of the total seats of the second round in the first phase of elections. The Muslim Brotherhood group criticized the elections process. They accused it of containing material discrepancies, briberies, and fraud. The security forces also failed to perform their duties in a neutral manner. They favored supporters of the ruling National Party at the expense of the Muslim Brotherhood. In a statement to Al-Alam TV, the deputy leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, Muhammad Habib, criticized the security forces of intimidating voters and ordering them not to vote for his group's candidates.
The second round of the first phase of Egyptian legislative elections in Cairo and 7 other municipalities witnessed lots of fraud, violence, and foul play. According to human rights organizations, these violations were committed by supporters of the ruling National Democratic Party.
وسط 120 طعنا تنظر أمام محكمة القضاء الإداري وأحكام ببطلان نتيجة انتخابات المرحلة الأولى.
Amidst 120 acts of election violations, the Administrative Civil Court is looking into voiding the first phase of legislative elections in a number of districts. The elections were criticized for containing material discrepancies, fraud, and foul play in favor of the ruling National Democratic Party. The first phase of the Egyptian parliamentary elections has been repeated in 8 municipalities. In this phase, the ruling party competed with the Muslim Brotherhood group for 130 parliamentary seats. The Muslim Brotherhood, which feared fraud and manipulation during elections, called on their high-ranking officials to show up at voting districts and guard polling booths to prevent any foul play, as was the case in some districts. Moreover, violence erupted in some municipalities where members and supporters of both parties clashed with each other.
الأمر الذي أدى إلى ظهور عملية عنف واشتباكات بين الجانبين في عدد من المحافظات التي جرت فيها الانتخابات.
I believe that despite all precautions taken by the Muslim Brotherhood to prevent election fraud, they were unsuccessful in doing so. Election fraud has been plaguing Egypt for a very long time, and it is not easy to get rid of.
The Egyptian Organization for Human Rights called on Egyptians to put an end to briberies and the so-called buying of votes, and to stop the violence that erupted in many of the voting districts.
The first phase of elections was repeated today. However, voter turnout was very low and lots of violence and clashes erupted in many voting districts. In fact, there were reports of exchange of fire and injuries. Most of the violence was initiated by members of the ruling National Party.
تقوم فيه الجهات المختصة بالتحقيق في عمليات التزوير التي جرت خلال المرحلة الأولى والتي أدت إلى تزايد الشكوك لدى الناخب المصري بشأن
The Egyptian Authority is investigating incidents of fraud committed during the first phase. Such discrepancies and foul play spread fear among voters regarding the transparency of the elections and whatever results may transpire. The first phase of parliamentary elections took place amidst many incidents of violence, briberies, clashes, attacks on candidates and monitors of the organizations for the civil society, as well as a security crackdown. These incidents will reflect negatively on the remaining phases of legislative elections, which are the building blocks of the new Egyptian parliament.
صالح علام العالم القاهرة.
A booby-trapped vehicle exploded in the parking lot of Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurant, an American fast food chain in the coastal city of Karachi, southern Pakistan, killing at least 6 people and injuring many others. This is not the first time Karachi, an important Pakistani trade center, has been targeted by car explosions. Western interests in Karachi have been under attack numerous times, especially in the aftermath of the so-called war on terrorism. Pakistani President Pervez Musharraf is a member of that campaign that was started by the United States in late 2001. The explosion took place in the parking lot of one of the fast food restaurants, Kentucky Fried Chicken, in the financial district of Karachi.
The booby-trapped car, which was packed with explosives, was parked in front of the restaurant at the civic center of the city. We are investigating the incident, and we will announce our findings as soon as they become available.
The explosion set off multiple fire alarms in the restaurants and shattered the windows of adjacent six-story building. Local police investigators confirmed that the explosions were detonated from a distance. It was a huge blast that echoed all over the city. Many of the casualties were employees working for some gas and oil companies, which have offices in this six-story administrative building. Emergency vehicles and fire engines rushed to the scene. Victims were transported by ambulances to nearby hospitals. Meanwhile, the Pakistani police sealed off the area near the Sheraton and international hotels. This attack, which was carried out to punish Pakistan for establishing relations with the Israeli occupation, comes after the Pakistani president, Pervez Musharraf, was interviewed on the American television news network CNN, in which he confirmed that Westerners have not been attacked in his country for more than 1 year.
A silent march was held with people carrying candles with the participation of the head of parliament and a number of parliamentary members, ministers, and public and private activists. The march began this evening condemning the terrorist aggression that targeted 3 hotels in Amman.
This candlelit march reached the plazas of the 2 hotels, Radisson SAS and the Amman Hyatt, which were the targets of criminal terrorist acts that targeted security and stability. Those who participated in this march, holding candles, included senior parliamentary and government officials, economic, media, and international officials, as well as industrial and guild activists, and the organization of the leadership of Arab youth.
This is a funeral march for the nation and a march of loyalty to the leadership, and a march of condemnation for the horrible crime committed, and an expression of Jordan's steadfastness by the sons and daughters of Jordan. It is also a prayer of mercy for the souls of the martyrs.
This is first an indication that we are condemning these acts. Second, we are coming together. And third, that we are looking towards the future. The foundation of this nation is one of security, peace, love, and harmony.
This silent march, which ended at the plaza of the Amman Hyatt, comes as a true expression of unity and solidarity that this nation has witnessed through a number of events and activities that have taken place.
The leadership of Arab youth strongly condemns what happened. God willing, we're calling for maintaining security and stability in Jordan and the rest of the region. God willing.
This march comes under the framework of a strong and solid Jordanian campaign against terrorism, which His Highness King Abdullah II confirmed is seldom matched anywhere else. This campaign poses the greatest challenge to the terrorists and the greatest condemnation of terrorist acts.
The latest developments in Lebanon, notably the UN's work in the country, top discussions between UN Under-Secretary General for Political Affairs Ibrahim Gambari and officials in Beirut. Gambari was currently meeting with Prime Minister Senora at the Grand Sarai before ending his 4-day visit to Lebanon tomorrow. May Fawaz has the details.
UN Under-Secretary General for Political Affairs Ibrahim Gambari met with Lebanese Defense Minister Ilyas Al-Mur, leading opposition member Walid Jumblat, and the heads of the country's religious communities to discuss the latest developments. Following their meeting, Jumblat warned Hezbollah against transporting President Bashar al-Assad's quarrel with the UN over Rafiq al-Hariri's assassination probe to Lebanon, saying, quote, "The Syrian regime remains accused until its innocence is proven." Without naming names, MP Jumblat expressed his hope that some groups with which Beirut harbors friendship, honesty, and alignment in Lebanon would abstain from carrying the battles of the Syrian regime to Lebanon. During a meeting with Gambari, Shiite cleric Muhammad Fadlallah told the UN official that Lebanon's independence and stability will reflect upon the region, adding that, quote, "the UN should get out of the pressure circle formed by the US." Gambari separately met with Grand Mufti Muhammad Qabbani, senior Shiite cleric Muhammad Fadlallah, and Maronite Patriarch Nasrallah Sfair. The UN official said his discussions focused on the importance of the UN's work in Lebanon. Gambari also announced that the UN mission would extend its mission from the south to cover the whole country, including the Palestinian camps. He did not give further information. Gambari met today with Telecommunications Minister Marwan Ahmedi and Energy and Water Minister Mohammed Fneish. Following his last meeting in Beirut with Prime Minister Fuad Senora, Gambari was to head to the UNIFIL post on the Lebanese-Israeli border before continuing his region tour to Jordan, Israel, and the occupied Palestinian territories.
Prime Minister Fuad Senora stressed if he was able to provide people with free fuel, he would not hesitate. But following his arrival back from Bahrain last night, Senora told the El Nahar Daily the problem lay in security, the necessary funds to subsidize fuel. Senora added that according to the study conducted by Water and Energy Minister Mohammed Fneish, the cost of fuel subsidies for 3 months alone was estimated between $85 and $90 billion, stressing that the annual expenditures reached $800 million. Meanwhile, various parties slammed a report by Syria's Tishrin newspaper claiming that demonstrations in Lebanon would bring the end to Senora's government.
Prime Minister Fuad Senora told the Al-Nahar Daily he expected Water and Energy Minister Mohammed Fneish to propose a viable solution to the cabinet meeting on Thursday. Senora did not wish to comment on the campaign against him and his government or about the report published by the Syrian daily Tishrin. The Premier stressed it was not the proper way to handle the situation. In a related development, Al-Nahar Daily said that official Lebanese sources received information about 8 former deputies and 1 current deputy who crossed the border of Masna and Abudiyya to Syria. The sources quoted by the Daily said the deputies included Ali Hassan al-Khalil, Abdel Rahim Rad, Jamal Ismail, Mahmoud Abu Hamdan, and former Minister Faiz Shikr. The sources were also quoted as saying that members from the Syrian National and Ba'ath parties met with some residents in Akkar, Tripoli, and Bekaa with the aim of instigating opposition to Thursday's cabinet meeting. But the same sources said that all groups in the region did not welcome calls against Senora's government. Many Lebanese parties slammed Tishrin's call for demonstrations as another move of interference in Lebanese internal affairs. The Free Patriotic Movement denied on Tuesday any connection to the call for demonstrations, as stated by Tishrin, and said that although its leadership opposed Senora's government's policies, namely its inadequacies in solving the socio-economic crisis, it would not participate in any move which could destabilize the internal situation or harm Lebanon's sovereignty.
According to French police sources, immigrant youth in the Parisian suburbs and a number of cities took to the streets in a show of defiance. This comes after the French government had announced that it had successfully restored order and security. On the eve of the 19th day of disturbances, the French police reported that the protesters had burned 215 cars and more than 70 rioters had been detained. The French Prime Minister, Dominique de Villepin, toured one of the suburban areas which had witnessed violence and disturbances during the past few days to restore hope and calm to these neighborhoods.
بالهادئة منذ اندلاع أعمال العنف حسب ما أكدته صباح اليوم المديرية العامة للشرطة الفرنسية إلا أنه تم تسجيل حرق 215.
Last night, which is the 19th consecutive night since riots erupted in France, was described as relatively calm by the Central Command of the French police. However, protesters had burned 215 cars and 71 immigrants had been taken into police custody. But the French police confirmed that last night did not witness any clashes between police and rioters. The situation has been contained, but the French government extended the state of emergency for another 3 months. In a speech by the French President Jacques Chirac, he confirmed that immigrant youth needed to be taught principles and values, and parents must bear the complete responsibility of what their children do. Mr. Chirac also confirmed that the government must combat illegal immigration, and it will take some measures to improve living conditions in these suburbs. Meanwhile, the French Prime Minister Dominique Villepin made a surprise visit to the Parisian suburb of Naya-sous-Bois, one of those suburbs that had witnessed disturbances during the past few days. According to the French Justice Department, more than 8,000 people had been detained since rioting erupted in France.
قدمتها وزارة العدل الفرنسية فقد تم توقيف أكثر من 8,000 شخص منذ بداية أعمال العنف في فرنسا.
radical plans which jeopardize Israel's economy and security. This according to an official Likud statement released shortly after Prime Minister Ariel Sharon convened MKs from his ruling party this morning in the Knesset to discuss the political developments. Perhaps surprisingly, much clearer calls for Likud unity were heard from the leaders of the so-called Likud rebels. MK Uzi Landau said the rebels would stand behind Sharon if he won the upcoming Likud primary. But Landau also repeated his intention to compete in the runoff. Rebels Miki Ratzon and Ehud Yatom also called for the party to unite to face the challenge of a reinvigorated labor faction. But despite the calls from numerous MKs, Sharon was mum over whether he would remain Likud chairman or bolt the party and head up a new political faction. Likud lawmaker Benjamin Netanyahu led a chorus of MKs in recommending general elections be held no earlier than May to break Amir Peretz's momentum and let him burn out.
I don't have any doubts that we are going to win the elections when Amir Peretz is heading the Labour Party. My primary concern is that Likud should A, elect its leader in the democratic way, in the vote of all the members of the party, and second of all, that we'll be united not just around the elected leader, but also around a certain platform that we'll all agree upon.
Foreign Minister Silvan Shalom and PA Chairman Mahmoud Abbas held an unscheduled meeting on the sidelines of the Internet Technology Summit, which got underway today in Tunisia. This was the highest level contact between the two sides in months. Abbas told Shalom that he was satisfied with the agreement reached over the border crossing to Egypt. Shalom reportedly expressed Israeli displeasure over the participation of Hamas in Palestinian elections coming up. Earlier, Shalom met with UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, and he thanked Annan for his efforts to improve Israel's standing in the world. The foreign minister also praised Annan for his harsh criticism of Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, who said Israel should be wiped off the map. Shalom said he hoped the International Atomic Energy Agency would refer the issue to the UN Security Council when the watchdog group meets on November 24th.
I had the chance to discuss developments in Palestine, the agreement that was signed between the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli government based on the 6+3 program that Mr. Wolfenson put forward in an attempt to open up Gaza to ensure that they do have a viable economy and there is connectivity and they are able to move people and goods in and out of the territory. The quartet and the United
Silvan Shalom is on an historic visit to Tunisia and arrived there on the first direct flight from Israel to Tunis. In addition to Shalom, the Israeli delegation included the foreign minister's mother, also included Communications Minister Dalia Itzik and Shas leader Eli Yishai. It was a kind of homecoming for Shalom, who was born in Tunisia. Shalom spoke of his pride to come back to his country of birth as Israel's foreign minister. The Israeli visitors landed on the island of Jerba, where they were welcomed by the local Jewish community with songs and a placard reading "Welcome to Jerba" in Hebrew. James Wolfenson is about ready to throw in the towel. The quartet's peace envoy said he was frustrated with his inability to persuade Israelis and Palestinians to work together. Wolfenson spent 20 weeks trying to reach an agreement for reopening the Rafah crossing between Egypt and Gaza. It was only after U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice intervened this week that a deal was finally brokered. Wolfenson said he may step down if he feels he has nothing more to contribute. And in related developments, the Army today opened the Erez crossing with Gaza to Palestinian workers, allowing more than 2,000 Palestinian laborers to enter Israel for the first time in several months. The workers had to undergo security checks by both the Palestinian Authority security forces and the IDF. Back here at home, an emotional reunion at the Schneider Children's Hospital in Petah Tikva. The parents of 13-year-old Palestinian boy Ahmed Ismail Khatib, who was shot and killed by IDF fire nearly 2 weeks ago in Jenin, arrived to meet the children whose lives were saved with their slain son's organs. Khatib was shot by IDF soldiers in Jenin while he was holding a toy gun, which soldiers mistook for a real rifle. His parents immediately decided to donate his organs to Israelis in what they called a gesture of peace. Khatib's organs were transplanted 12 days ago into the bodies of 5 people, 3 of whom are children. All eyes were tearing today as the bereaved parents united with 12-year-old Samach, a resident of the Galilee who received Khatib's heart. The couple also met the mother of Menucha Levinson, a 3-year-old Orthodox Jew from Jerusalem who had one of Khatib's kidneys transplanted into her. And 6-year-old Muhammad from a Bedouin village near Arad, he received Hatib's other kidney.
A number of Palestinians expressed their happiness that the two sides, the Israelis and Palestinians, have come to an agreement about opening the Rafah border crossing, building the Gaza airport, and facilitating the transport of goods through the Karni airport crossing. Meanwhile, others expressed their fears that this agreement is just an illusion, far from reality. The Rafah border crossing is the only land passageway for Gaza into the rest of the world. After years of this crossing being controlled by the Israelis, it will become a place where Palestinians will be able to travel through freely. Today, after an agreement to reopen the crossing with the presence of a third party, the crossing was opened for one day for people on the Egyptian side who were waiting to return home to the Gaza Strip. The Palestinians appeared very relieved to be able to pass through the crossing quickly with the help of various equipment.
When the crossing is opened by the Palestinians, it's better than when it's opened by the Jews, because the Jews have caused us a lot of agony by keeping us outside of the crossing. We've been waiting for 7 days. We're crying tears of blood.
Today, within exactly half an hour, we crossed from Egypt into the Gaza Strip without any complications. We hope that this situation continues without any Israeli complications.
However, there are still others who have doubts about the seriousness of these agreements, expressing their fear that the third party will limit the free movement of citizens.
The Palestinian administration of the crossing is what we want and hope for, but we are afraid that the third party is going to control us. If they see something they don't like, they will say, close the crossing, and the crossing will be closed. The Jews will impose their control of the crossing from far away using the cameras that will be placed there.
But Palestinian monitors say that the situation remains the same and that Israel maintains control over the crossings. However, they believe that this agreement is a step in the right direction and notable progress towards reaching total free movement of Palestinians without Israeli intervention.
This reveals that Israel is not prepared to compromise on its control over the lives of the Palestinians. However, the agreement that was made is big progress compared to what Israel was demanding. It guarantees at a large scale the movement of the Palestinian people and goods with less control from the Israeli side.
Palestinians view the agreement on the Rafah crossing as the best possible thing that could have been achieved under the current circumstances. Although Israel was able to intervene in negotiations concerning the crossing point, the agreement that was reached makes significant progress.
According to UN officials, the lives of hundreds of thousands of Pakistani earthquake-displaced refugees are at stake if they are not immediately given assistance and shelter. In the aftermath of this devastating earthquake, and as the cold season of winter nears, the United Nations, many international organizations, and the Pakistani army are intensifying their efforts to contain the situation. They are building campgrounds and shelters in nearby valleys to accommodate the high number of displaced villagers expected to seek refuge from the mountains as the winter season approaches. They are also deploying construction crews and equipment to remote mountain areas to repair some of the extensive property damage.
The earth had shaken for only a few seconds. However, many Pakistani cities and villages, which were once full of life, were leveled to the ground, turning into piles of rubble. Destruction was evident everywhere, and many displaced victims wandered aimlessly in the wilderness and in remote and cold areas of the mountains. Many of those refugees were stranded in the middle of nowhere after rock and mudslides trapped them, keeping them away from their towns and villages. They walked many days and nights, hoping they would be rescued.
We did not receive any relief or assistance in these remote areas. Relief and rescue missions reached only big cities and towns.
Our town is 14 hours of walking away from the city of Beirut, and it did not receive any relief or assistance. When the earthquake struck, our main concern was to survive it.
This is the case of many refugees stranded in these remote areas. They did not receive any assistance. It has been 1 month since the earthquake has struck, and the United Nations is still trying to remedy the situation situation by putting a bandage on the wound. The UN continued to call on the international community to rush their pledges and financial support to the victims and the displaced before the cold season of the winter arrives. Another human catastrophe will unfold in these mountain areas, especially in Kashmir and Pakistan.
1 month had passed since the devastating earthquake struck, and we are still dealing with its negative impacts and side effects. We do not have yet an exact or final figure of the number of casualties and victims.
Pakistan received lots of relief and assistance in the aftermath of this earthquake. However, more financial assistance and relief efforts need to be made, especially in the area of health, shelter, and relief. In fact, the number of earthquake victims and displaced exceed the level of assistance provided. According to a UN preliminary estimate, there are 3 million people displaced by this earthquake. As fear of the spread of contagious diseases has become imminent, the Pakistani government requested medical help from many countries. The United Arab Emirates and other countries had deployed a number of medical teams with modern and state-of-the-art equipment to the region. Doctors are working around the clock to treat and save as many victims as possible. Relief and rescue agencies are racing with time to beat the odds and the unavoidable, such as limited resources, the lack of local and international expertise to deal with a disaster of this high magnitude, the difficulties of reaching remote areas, and the bad weather. 1 month passed and the Pakistani government has not reached a final figure on the number of earthquake victims and displaced. The United Nations continue to call on the international community to help those earthquake victims and displaced. Some lucky survivors found shelters such as this camp near Islamabad. However, many million others are still trapped in remote areas, waiting to be rescued by the international community.
In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, greetings and welcome to Jan in English News from Tehran. I'm Beirut. Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad told a gathering of Friday Fair leaders from across the country on Wednesday that his government is determined to rid the nation of corruption. Referring to plans on hand by the cabinet to spread justice in Iran, he noted bigger steps would be taken next fiscal year for a fair distribution of country's budget. Ahmadinejad has strongly called for a fight against corruption and wrongdoings in Iran. Visiting Iraqi National Security Advisor Muaffaq Rabai took up regional issues on Wednesday with Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Ali Larijani. Following the talks, Larijani told reporters the U.S. is not after establishment of a sustainable security in the region and added Tehran attaches great significance to Iraqi security. Expressing delight over Wednesday's talks, Larijani called for removal of minor problems still existing between the two Muslim neighbors. Iranian Foreign Minister Manouchehr Mottaki says unilateralism is a major obstacle hindering efforts to settle global problems. Mottaki said that Wednesday in a meeting with visiting Swedish Deputy Foreign Minister Hans Dahlgren and added, the struggles of nations to win back freedom and expel occupiers should not be viewed as terrorism. On Iran's nuclear program, Mottaki said Iran will continue its cooperation with the UN nuclear agency. The Swedish side, for his part, expressed hope that Iran and Europe will resume nuclear talks soon.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.